Chapter 14. I guess now is the time we'll see if this disguise really works or not. Wedge sat back in the Starliner's plush seat, barely glancing at the screen built into the rear of the seat in front of him. On it played little holographic reports about the nature of the rebellion and the war being fought against it by the Empire. The gist of the reports was to suggest that the battle with Palpatine's murderers was going well and justice was being restored to the galaxy as victory over the treasonous rebels was gained. Wedge, disguised as he was, presented an argument that belied the Empire's propaganda efforts. A metal mask covered his forehead, right eye, and cheek on down to the edge of his jaw. Part of the mask continued on past his right ear, flattening it utterly, and on back to the rear of his skull. Another piece curled down along his jaw and wrapped around his throat. A round lens set in place over his right eye enlarged it and made it very easy to see how blue the contact lens he had on was. Surface pressure kept the mask in place, making it decidedly uncomfortable to wear. It also made the rounded edge on his face dig sufficiently into his skin to appear as if the metal had replaced flesh on that side of his face. The mask also unbalanced his head enough that his neck hurt too much to hold his head straight all the time. As a result, he had let his head loll to the right for the most part, and that added to his disguise. The customs official who had come aboard right after the Darkin Starliner Jewel of Churba had entered the Coruscant system stopped in the aisle opposite him. "I need to see your identification." Wedge slid an identification card from inside the breast of his black Imperial uniform. He used his right hand that had been encased in black leather. The glove did little to hide the blocky, angular nature of the hand, though even if it had been smooth, the fact that it consisted of two thick fingers and a thumb would have given the customs man the idea something was wrong. Gentle whirring sounds emanated from the glove as Wedge's fingers tightened on the card and his wrist rotated to hand the card over to the official. "Here you are, sir." Wedge's words came in a buzzing croak, half because of the pressure on his larynx and half because of the voice modulator built into the mask. The customs official gave the ID card only a cursory glance before he swiped it through a slot on his datapad. "Colonel Antar wrote." "Roat." "What?" "My name is pronounced Roat." The buzz made the words all but unintelligible, though the emphasis he placed on them appeared to get through to the customs official. "Pardon, sir. Colonel Roat. You are bound for Imperial Center for Reconstru—" "Yes, of course." The man's voice trailed off. "Everything seems in order here, Colonel." Wedge raised his hand to take the card back, but did not let his claw close on it yet. "Are you certain? My baggage is in my sleeping berth." "Yes, I'm certain." The man impatiently tapped the card against Wedge's thumb. "I understand the need for security, sir." "I'm certain, sir." "If you have trouble, I will help." Wedge let his voice fall to a whisper, as if suddenly overcome with fatigue. His head dipped slightly at the same time, then he brought it back up. "I will help." The customs man nodded. "I will remember that, Colonel." Wedge took the card and fumbled a couple of times before he slid it home again. "I live to serve." The customs man moved on, mumbling under his breath. "You're dead and still serving. The MD4 should have let you die." Wedge would have missed the remark, but the hearing enhancement built into the mask and fed into his right ear allowed him to catch it. He killed the smile the comment threatened to produce because he knew Colonel Antar Roat would find little in life that was funny, and getting caught by customs as I tried to land on Coruscant would not be funny at all. It had not occurred to Wedge to wonder how he would be inserted into Coruscant until he was on his way for his briefing about his cover. He'd known, of course, that he couldn't fly an X-Wing in there, and he sincerely doubted much in the way of contraband or illegal immigrants made it onto Coruscant without someone knowing and approving of it. He'd assumed he would be disguised somehow, but it never crossed his mind that he would head into Coruscant in an Imperial naval officer's uniform. The briefing about his new identity had been fascinating. General Kraken's people had fashioned several identities for him. One, Colonel Roat, was designed for insertion and possible reuse later to get back out again. He had another one for the time he would be scouting around on Coruscant, and a third as his exit identity. He had been informed about the latter two identities, but all data cards and other things for them would be supplied on Coruscant after he had been met and had a chance to settle in. The Intelligence Division had chosen Colonel Antar Roat as his insertion cover for a couple of reasons. The first was that the prosthetics hid Wedge's identity almost completely. Moreover, they were a forbidden attractant. They made him unusual enough that people would pay attention to him, but they would see the parts, not the man wearing them. And people caught staring at him would look away in shame. They would remember a man with war injuries, but any details would concern his mechanical parts. Since the parts could be removed and discarded, authorities would be looking for a man who no longer existed once Wedge had shed the disguise. The second reason Road had been created for Wedge was because Wedge was a pilot. He could accurately and intelligently converse about starfighter combat at Prest. His cover story indicated that he had been shot down in the defense of Vladit in the Ratchuk system, and Wedge could talk about that battle since he'd been there. I was on the rebel side, but I was there. A slight tremor rippled through the ship. Wedge hit a button beside the screen in front of him, and the view shifted to an external one, being flashed from a holocam mounted on the aft of the Jewel of Chirba. A shuttle lifted off from a spinal docking port at the top of the ship. The ultra-class passengers had traveled in what was supposed to be unparalleled luxury on the Starliner's upper decks, and those who could afford it clearly took their own shuttles down to the planet to avoid waiting to disembark with the other travelers. It amazed Wedge that people would or could exist in such luxury in such a time of turmoil. He found their desire for pleasure and ease less disturbing than their apparent lack of foresight. From the rebellion's point of view, the end was nigh for the Empire, though whether the rebellion or someone like Warlord Zinj was going to emerge as the new force in the galaxy was open to conjecture. The fact was, though, that no matter who won, avoiding unnecessary expenditures of money in such dire times seemed just to be common sense to him. He did realize that some people would spend money to spin around themselves a cocoon within which the rebellion did not exist. Maintaining the illusion that the Empire was hale and hearty was not difficult if price was no object. Wedge had no doubt that in some far-flung enclaves of the Empire, not only were there people who did not believe the Emperor had died, but there were people who would keep on believing he was alive and well for years, if not decades, and possibly even centuries. Ignorance I can understand, but not willful ignorance. He killed another smile before it could blossom, though this one was more difficult to kill than the first. The very same people who he considered willfully ignorant would find him deluded and misguided. Half of them would deny there were any problems inherent in the imperial system, as if slavery, anti-alien sentiments, and weapons that destroyed planets could be so easily forgotten. The other half might admit there were problems, but they would shy from accepting open insurgency against the legitimate government as a solution to them. For those people, working within the system was the way to achieve change, but they failed to realize that when a system had become as corrupt as the Empire, significant change was impossible without a shattering of the power structure. The trick of it all, and what tempted him to smile, was that all sides could make reasonable and logical arguments for their points of view. Therein was the problem of politics. Since it was the art of compromise, round upon round of discussion could end in no solution being reached. The only time serious change was made was when an individual was willing to die for what he believed. Absent that basic commitment, a commitment most imperial citizens were not prepared to make, the Empire would continue to exist in one form or another, institutionalizing evil. A man appeared at the end of his row of seats. Colonel Roat? Wedge looked over slowly, then nodded. Prefect Dot. It has been, well, years. As Perrin Dot, an Imperial prefect with graying brown hair and brown eyes, Pash Kraken nodded. It was last at the ceremony ending the year of mourning, as I recall, just before you were transferred away. I would not have known it was you, but the customs man told me who you were. The galaxy gets smaller as time goes by. Wedge stiffly patted the seat beside him. Join me, if you do not mind. My body has been broken, but my brain was unaffected. You are coming to Imperial Center on business? You know better than to ask such questions, Colonel, just as I know not to ask where you were injured. Pash settled himself into the seat and loosely fastened the restraining belts on. This has been a very smooth flight. It has indeed. Wedge nodded. Pash's comment had confirmed what Wedge had decided about the journey to Coruscant. Security was not so tight as to uncover them, nor as lax as might have been expected were the Emperor's core institutions breaking down. It also told him that Pash had encountered no trouble fitting in with the other passengers. While the two of them had known they were traveling on the same flight, they had not made contact previously. Had there been any difficulties, they would not have made contact prior to landing, and only did so now to facilitate pickup in the spaceport. A smiling flight facilitator's face appeared on the flat screen. We are beginning landing operations. Please bring your seats into a full and... Wedge killed the sound on the display. I hope our landing is as smooth as the flight. As do I. Pash sighed convincingly. I hate spaceport tie-ups. If things are going to go wrong, it's generally there. The spaceport at which Jewel of Churba set down was a multi-story facility built atop a triad of towers approximately 50 kilometers from the Imperial Palace. The docking bay had multiple levels that allowed passengers from the various classes to disembark without having to mix in with the others. The rich who had not left in their own shuttles were received in an opulent, spacious area that Wedge saw through a porthole as Jewel settled in for a landing. The keel runners, aliens and low-class humans, were offloaded in a secure cargo area. The first through third class passengers exited the Starliner through multiple ports and into a clean but crowded waiting area. Customs officials ran spot checks on some of the passengers, but Wedge saw no one hustled away. Beyond the immigration area was luggage retrieval, but before he or Pash could worm their way into the crowd to get their things, a brown-haired woman in a prim gray medtech uniform approached them. Colonel Roat? Wedge nodded. I am Roat. This is my friend, Prefect Perrin Dot. You are? Irin Fossier. I am from the Rohair Biomechanical Clinic. I was sent to meet you. You were? I had been told you were notified. I left word with your aide, Captain Sino. That explains it. Sino was killed just before I began my journey. You have my sympathies, sir. Accepted. Wedge nodded solemnly. The woman had used the correct phrases to introduce herself, proving she was one of Kraken's agents. Wedge waited while she and Pash picked up the luggage. Then she led them out to a waiting lift car. It had labels on the side proclaiming it to be from the Rohari Biomechanical Clinic, but otherwise looked utterly ordinary. Their luggage was loaded into the external rack. Then the three of them climbed in, and the driver in the forward compartment headed them away from the spaceport. The woman sat back on the bench seat that faced the rear of the craft. It will take us 15 minutes or so to get where we're going. We could get there faster, but... Wedge smiled as much as the mask would allow him to. Precautions, we understand. I was wondering, though, if I can't take this mask off. By all means. Wedge subvocalized the command that let the air out of the built-in bladders, loosening the mask. He worked it off, then coughed and finally shucked his hand out of the claw glove. Luke doesn't seem to mind his replacement hand. It must be that Jedi training. Pash chuckled politely, but the woman just sat there and stared for a moment. Then she blushed and looked away. Forgive me. I had been told you were important, but I didn't realize. I remember your face from some early Imperial warrants. You're Wedge Antilles, right? Wedge nodded. You saw the Imperial warrants with my picture on them? They had limited circulation. The diktat might have been with the Empire, but not so all Corellians. She extended her hand to Wedge. I'm Ayala Wasiri. It's a pleasure to meet you. Ayala Wasiri? Why is that name familiar? Wedge shook her hand and let her introduce herself to Pash Kraken, eliciting another blush, while he thought about her name. Then it came to him. That's what Corrin's human partner was called. You saw the Imperial warrants when you were with Corsac. Ayala blinked, then nodded slowly. They must have given you a thorough briefing. Not really, but I have heard of you. He shrugged. I can't say from where, of course. She shook her head. No, of course not. What I can say is this. Wedge smiled. What I have heard makes me think this mission's smooth start should extend yet further and give us a chance to accomplish everything we set out to do. And that's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.